Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Loving Me. This is Nisha, your self love guide. I'm really stoked for this conversation. It's been a while and it's good to be back. I'm super excited to be here with Christy Holt. Now, Christy and I met on social media somehow, and we had an amazing conversation. And what I love about Christy is she's the happiness hussy. And I was like, I need to have a conversation with her. So, Christy is an adventure guide. She is a podcast host. She's a best selling international author, and she's on a mission to help everyone be really freaking happy. And so, thank you so much for being here, Christy. I'm super excited to be having this conversation with you.
Yes, thank you. I'm so excited to be here as well. And yeah, for everybody listening, hi, I'm Christy. And as you mentioned, I call myself the Happiness Hussy. And yeah, this mission came from personal experience. And so I just kind of want to set the stage for the listeners to see, is this conversation, speaking to you? And if you are someone who is maybe in a relationship and you're sort of looking across the table and thinking like, is this it? Is there something more? Or maybe you're single and you're struggling to find that person. This conversation, I hope, will be really helpful and inspiring for you to go out there and create the love and happiness that you deserve and that you want deep down inside. So if that's sort of speaking to you, then stay tuned because we are going to go on a little adventure today, and I'm so excited.
Oh, that's so amazing. So I have to ask,
Yeah.
Where did the happiness hussy come from? Like that entire phrase just lights me up. Tell us the backstory behind that.
Yeah, I'll try and give you the abbreviated version, but it basically came from my cousin who jokingly called me a happiness hussy in a sort of semi-sarcastic way. Like I was sharing with her someone who had kind of commented that they saw me on social media, and I was like, oh, like I hope you were inspired or uplifted by it. And this person kind of was like, mm-hmm. And so I was relaying this story to my cousin who was like, oh my gosh, you happiness hussy, you. And I was like, oh my God, yes, I am. And I am stealing that. I mean, I don't have to steal it. She gave it to me and I'm taking it all the way to the happy planet.
All the way to the bank.
Yes.
I totally love it. Well, it's very memorable. I love it.
Yeah.
So what happened? What sort of happened in your life that got you to a point where you decided that this is what you needed to be doing, was to help people have the most freaking amazing, happy, loving life and relationship that they can have?
Well, as you might guess, it started when I was actually really stuck. That's where the story really starts. Because I didn't get here where I am today without having kind of gone through some things, right? That shaped me and molded me into who I am. And so who was I a handful of years ago, maybe just shy of a decade ago? I was a people pleaser. I was wearing masks. I was aiming for perfection. Like, what even is that anyway? But like,
exist.
I was unhappy in a high conflict marriage. And I was suffering from what I lovingly refer to now as just a momitis, which is really just to say that I was so enamored in my role of motherhood that I forgot who the hell I was as an individual human being. And so I felt anxious, overwhelmed, unhappy. I was, feeling these thoughts of overwhelm and anxiety before my feet would hit the floor in the morning. Like it was pervasive. And I'm not going to lie, I had some coping strategies that weren't,
not
the best. Shopping online and having some day drinks with girlfriends and binge watching entire seasons of very long running shows. When it comes to things, we all have our coping strategies. Some of them are not very healthy for us, and some of them we can pretend are really healthy, like running, which is another coping mechanism that I picked up along the way in an effort to run away from all of the challenges in my relationship. Not only was it good, physically for me and for my mental health, but it also was a bit of an escape and a bit of an excuse for me to literally leave the house and avoid any kind of conflict.
Yeah.
So, I was doing all of these things, not to mention also, if I'm just going to be really, really honest and real here, I was
Yeah.
also doing a lot of complaining and blaming and finger pointing at my ex,
Yeah.
at life, and at the things that were just going on that weren't going the way that I had planned for them to go. And I sort of had this like holy shit moment where I realized I'm the common denominator in all
Yeah.
of my problems.
I love those
So,
moments. I was going to ask, what was the moment?
yeah. So I had this moment and it kind of just all hit me. And for anybody who has had that moment, you know that it can go one of two ways, right? It
Right.
can go into the shame and the guilt and the, oh my God, I can't believe, like I should have, blah, blah, like I made the wrong choice, all of these things where we start to pile on ourselves and feel badly about the choices that we've made in the past. Thankfully, I had done enough sort of inner work on myself to build up my self-esteem and my self-worth to the point where I didn't slide right into guilt and shame. And instead, I used it as an empowering moment, recognizing that, hey, wait a minute, if I'm the common, denominator in all of my problems, I'm also there when it comes to all of the solutions to these
Yeah.
problems. And so I shifted into that. Like, very long story short, I ended up choosing me instead of complaining and blaming and focusing on what was wrong. I chose myself and decided what I wanted to create for myself and to go and start doing that. As I said, I was very much in the motherhood role. And at the time, I was willing to stay, even though I was unhappy, because I thought I was protecting my kids. But
Yeah. That's
somewhere along the way, I realized, hold up on a minute here, because I don't actually think I'm protecting them by doing this. What I was doing was showing them how to be people pleasers, to wear masks, to strive for perfection, and how to, functionally manage pretty pervasive anxiety and mild depression, right? That wasn't what I wanted for my children. I also didn't want them thinking that what's the even word I'm looking for, but like that kind of relationship that they were being modeled with my
yeah.
ex. There was no way I wanted them to grow up and have that be their normal, right? It just was very unhealthy. We weren't communicating. There was a lot of anxious avoidant dance going on, and it's
Yeah.
just not what I really wanted for my children. And
Yeah.
so I had to choose me. I had to choose something different. And in order to model something different, I had to do it first,
You have
right?
to be
We can't
it.
just talk about it.
You got to be it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, there's a couple of things that you said in there that I think are really important that just stood out to me. And the first was about, I call it radical responsibility,
Yeah.
right? And
Yep.
it's about taking, it's easy. I've done it. We blame everybody else for
It
our
feels better.
yeah, it feels better. It feels greater, better, but it's about taking radical responsibility for every area of your life. And I think if you want to really love yourself, I mean, you can't control what other people do or how
Yeah.
they react, but we can control what we
Respond.
do and how we respond.
Yeah.
So radical responsibility, I love that. And the other thing was really around this, and this is big. It's every woman needs to hear this. It's around when you said, I chose me.
Mm-hmm.
Even being in a marriage, being in a mother, I feel like there's so many women out there that can relate to this, especially high achieving women, that we want to be everything to our children and our partners and our coworkers and everything. And the burnout and the people pleasing, I've been through all of that. And for me, it was about choosing everyone else first and being everything for everyone else first and not choosing me. And that pivotal moment of saying, I love my family, I love my kids, but I got to choose me. Can you sort of delve a
Yeah.
bit more into that decision?
Yeah, 1,000%. Exactly like you said. Honestly, the truth is we've been conditioned to believe that choosing ourselves is selfish. We have been told that self-care and, taking care of ourselves first is selfish,
It's not.
except for the situation on the airplane. That's the only time that we're allowed to care for ourselves first. But that's a perfect analogy for life, because if we don't put on our own oxygen masks and care for ourselves, we have nothing left to give, because eventually this overgiving, constantly giving to other people and people pleasing and putting our own needs way on the back burner, leads to burnout and, well, also frustration, disappointment, and resentment, which are not good in a relationship. But also just the physical aspect of it is we don't have the energy to give to others. And
Yeah.
so I call BS on the whole idea that self-care is selfish, and totally believe that in order to really give at our best, and I know that people pleasers, we come from this conditioning that we're supposed to give to everyone else before ourselves, and usually that doesn't mean there's much left for us, right? And that it's humble to always be giving, and it's almost like a martyr level of giving.
Yeah.
And so if we can just like scale that back, people pleasers want to give, okay? So, and that's not bad, that's not wrong, that's actually beautiful, and that's very human. But we don't want to be giving to the detriment of our own well-being, because that
Balance.
doesn't give us the ability to continue giving, right? It ends up with us being sick, mentally, physically, emotionally sick, and unable to continue giving. So if you actually want to continue to give, you have to give first to yourself to build up that energy. Not only that, but it's so much easier to give to others when you're full, when you're full up and whole yourself, and you have this abundance of love overflowing. It just becomes so much more natural and easy. And so you actually are able to give a lot more. So
I totally 100% agree. It's really about a balance. And I read somewhere that the heart is never really full unless it's equally giving and receiving.
yeah.
Right? You can't give what you don't have. I love all of that. And so you chose yourself. Can you share a bit about what were some of the key things that you did as you moved along your journey to getting from that place of being stuck and, people pleasing and not setting boundaries and whatnot, to being the happiness hussy and being somebody that can really give back and what you can give to your clients? What were some of the things you did?
Well, I do speak about this shift from stuck just to unstuck, really, just like that very first shift. And a lot of it is awareness. That awareness is actually 9/10 of the way there. And I share a lot about that in my first book, Unstuck for Women, because what I wanted to create with that resource is something to just help people, honestly, to get just dislodged from this feeling of stuckness. And I want to preface all of this by saying that stuck is not a bad thing. It actually can be a very good thing, because it can actually be an indicator, an invitation for you to step towards that thing that you're being called to. Stuck, you're never actually stuck, but I understand the feeling of stuck very well firsthand. And it's actually the dissonance, right, between where you are now and where you would like to be. That's all that is. It's just creating some cognitive dissonance. Like, I'm not where I'm like feeling like I want to be.
Yeah.
And so that's actually an invitation or a call. And so for me, one of the main things that I did to start getting dislodged from the autopilot survival mode function, which means reacting based on memories and past experiences and past unprocessed trauma. So that's where we will react, or what people will say they have been triggered and that kind of thing. I look at that as an activation. This is actually bringing something up for you to look at, for something for you to explore within yourself. But the first piece of shifting from the survival mode response into a thriving kind of response, which is choosing how you want to respond, is to create a little space, right?
Okay.
It's not a huge amount of space, but it is enough space that we can move through that initial survival mode reaction, the flight, fight, freeze, or fawn response, and instead choose our response. So typically this survival mode response is between 30 to 90 seconds. And so this is ultimately just about creating space before choosing how we respond. So instead of reacting, we can actually choose with intention. And one of the tools that worked best for me was meditation. And I know that a lot of people out there, when they're navigating life from this stuck space, have this idea like, I can't meditate, or I do it wrong, or it's not for me, or I can't sit still, or my mind is too busy. I know, because I've had all of those same thoughts myself. But the fact is, it's not about sitting perfectly still. It's not about quieting your mind. It's actually not about even listening to that. Here's what the real thing for me was. It was creating space just for me. That's what it was about. And it wasn't about sitting for an hour.
Because we think that's what it's supposed to be. Even I was guilty of that. I need to sit on like one of those half moon cushions. My hands need to be like this, right? And I need to, and then I was like, oh my God, I can't get there. So I would just not do it.
Right. And so I think there's so many misconceptions about what meditation is that people feel like they can't do it or that they're doing it wrong. And so my invitation is to let go of all the rules, all of the ideas, and just all of the perceptions that you may have had about what meditation is, and simply set aside 5 minutes for you. If you have a busy mind, guided meditations can really help you just give you a focal point, something to listen to, something to follow along with. That is still where I spend most of my meditation times. And actually, for anybody listening who is of that mindset, like, I don't know if I can, or I'm not very good at it, my mind is so busy, I am going to share with you that I've created some very fun, short, I call them quickie meditations. They are 5 minutes or under. And hopefully if you don't like offensive language or like a little bit of like sassy language, they're not going to be for you, because I call them the sweary AF meditations. And they are just a little different take on it to make it a little bit more lighthearted, a little bit more fun, a little more entertaining. So they're a little easier to sit through. But again, even if you zone out and start thinking about your grocery list, it's okay. You just bring it back.
Right.
That's okay. You're just setting aside the time for you. Like, and I know you were going to ask me about a self-care practice, and I've kind of spoiled it already by saying that this is the one. This is the one that you just choose to put yourself first for 5 minutes. Maybe it's before you even get out of bed in the morning, right? Mm-hmm. Just setting aside a little bit of time to focus on just you before you start going and taking care of everybody else.
Yeah, I love that. It's so important. And I think sometimes we overcomplicate that, right? Like I just said, meditate. When you say meditation to a lot of people, it's like, oh my God, it's got to look a certain way. But
throwing out the rules.
You can even just go for a walk for 5 minutes, go sit in nature. Like I love the idea of awareness and then just taking space. That's so simple. I love that. So you work with clients, your mission is to get people to feel as freaking happy as possible. So can you talk a little bit about the work that you're doing now and what you have going on with your coaching business and, how you're really helping people and what you provide to them?
Yeah, I have a few different ways that I'm helping people, of course, because I have my book and I have my podcast. I also have both group and one-to-one program offerings. They're all essentially with the same mission to help you to, honestly, to reignite the love within yourself, because that is going to help you in turn create those experiences as a human that you are designed for, right? It's ultimately on this whole theme of helping you recognize who you really are. Because I say it in my book, and I've said it a bunch of times across social media, we often think that we have a relationship problem, or we think we have some other sort of problem. At the end of the day, these are actually identity problems, right? We've forgotten that we are magical. We've forgotten that we are whole. We have forgotten that we have sovereignty and personal power, and that we are the creators of our experience. And I know that some people out there might be thinking like, well, creator of this, I didn't create this. I don't want this person, this specific thing. I feel you. I get it. And what you always remain to be is the creator of how you respond, right? Yeah. And that is what creates your personal experience of reality, right? This is why, two different people will maybe share an experience and have a completely different perspective on what went down, right? It is your personal lens and your personal experience that creates your version of reality, if you will. And so by shifting our perceptions, our lenses, we can actually create miracles, and we can create the experiences that we want, rather than those ones that are, again, based on the past survival, autopilot type reactions.
Yeah. I mean, we create our own reality. It goes back to that radical responsibility
Yep.
and choosing yourself. That's amazing. So you talked about your book. You've got a recent book that you've just
Yes.
can you share,
Yeah.
wave a copy of that in front of the screen?
I
Is
yeah,
it behind you there?
it is right here behind me. It is Love Unstuck. And this is all about creating healthy, happy relationships, you know, as within, so without, right? This
Right.
is a foundation of self-love because the truth is the most important relationship that you are ever going to have is that one
Mm,
that you have with yourself. It literally sets the tone for every other relationship. And everything in life is a relationship. You have a relationship with food, you have a relationship with money, you have a relationship with your annoying neighbor down the street, you have all obviously relationships with the people that you know and interact with on a regular basis. And you even have relationships with things like social media, right? And so this foundational basis that we have within ourselves impacts all of those. So working on yourself is like the magic pill, right? Not like the diet pills, like
yeah.
ugh, diet culture, poo, boo, boo. Don't love it. That is all predicated on a system of telling you what's wrong with you, telling you that you're broken and then you need fixing, right? I don't believe that at all. I believe you are already whole. I don't think there's anything that needs fixing. There's nothing missing from you. But we as humans are forgetful and we forget that we're whole. And based on past experiences and sometimes unresolved trauma, we will disassociate parts of us, right? We
Yeah.
will set aside parts, we'll hide them because they called into question basically our survival in that moment. We'll see this a lot in like childhood trauma
Mhm.
where maybe your parents told you stop crying so much, or good girls don't shout, or
Yeah.
any of these sort of things where we realize that in order to maintain favor, which favor is required when we're a small child who has no ability to care for our own needs, calling into our survival into question, we need to maintain favor with our caregivers. So we will do what we need to do to maintain that connection, to maintain that attachment. And sometimes that means tucking away those parts of ourselves that we have through probably no intention of our parents. This is again probably their trauma from their upbringing and so forth, many generations long.
That.
Um, it's like the blind leading the blind, right? It's like we are all traumatized in some way, and we're just trying to navigate life. But if we can really just come to a place where we take that radical responsibility for ourselves,
Yeah.
we set our paths on what we want, we can start changing that trajectory and we can start creating the relationships that we truly want. Again, starting with the one that we have with ourselves, because that's really where it's all at.
It is. I 100 totally get it.
Yeah.
The last question I want to ask you before we close this out is, I'm all about self-love, and I love that you're all about self-love.
Yeah.
What does self-love mean to you? You've probably already mentioned it, but just what does it mean to you when you hear those two words?
Well, I mean, I think there's many ways to define self-love,
Yeah.
and there are ways that are more like doing, right?
Yeah.
Self-care activities. So that I would say is like a little bit more self-care, and those are part of self-love.
Yeah.
But how do I define self-love? I would just say for me, it is the act of accepting yourself
Yeah.
as you are. That is sort of the key baseline for me. Just accepting yourself with all of those, quirks, all of those things that
Yeah.
make you special and unique, those things that, of course, you've been told are weird, those things that you've been told maybe are quote unquote flaws. The truth is, you're one of a kind, baby. You are magnificent. And so by embracing all of those things that make you you, even if maybe you've grown not to like them so much, by just accepting them, just
Yeah.
saying, this is who I am. It doesn't mean that you're not ever going to grow or change or evolve or any of these things. It's like this like arm jiggle, right?
Yeah.
If I go on pretending this isn't here, I don't even want to admit it. Guess how likely I am to change it? Probably about zero, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm not even accepting that this is the starting point. And so in order to accept it, it's not to say like, oh my gosh, I love this. It's so great. But it is just to say that this is where I am right now. This is who I am.
It's a part of who I am.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing is when you just accept your starting point, then you have all of this opportunity to continue to grow and evolve and expand. And not like, here's the thing for me is a lot of people, like I said, the diet culture is like, there's something wrong with you. You need to fix this. You're broken. Something's not good enough. You're always striving to be better. It's like this perpetual hamster wheel of healing, which is the whole thing, the constant healing, or the constant self-improvement to always be better and better and better. And while those are like nice ideas, they also continuously feed from an idea of not good enoughness, right?
Yeah.
They are always coming from this place of lack. And I propose something a little bit different because I believe you're already whole. I believe that you are perfectly imperfect, designed precisely with all of those weird quirks and things to do exactly what you are here to do. So when we approach personal growth or healing from a standpoint of wholeness instead, we get to grow and evolve instead of striving to be better or, looking at it like there's something wrong with us. We just get to continue having this glorious human experience and trying on different things as we go. And so that perspective just makes it a little, I don't know about you listeners, but for me, it feels so much better than this constant need to be better. Like you're already good enough, more than good enough. You're amazing. You're so worthy of every dream coming true. There's no obstacles that you can't overcome. There's nothing you're not resourced and equipped to create for yourself. Literally nothing. And so by shifting this little perspective, and I always say the miracle is in the perspective shift. This just allows you to step into versions of yourself that feel absolutely freaking amazing, where you are living from a place of happiness, peace, love, joy, bliss, whatever that highest state feels, whatever word you want to use to describe that highest state within yourself. Like not everyone resonates with happiness, I suppose. Some people prefer peace or, adventure, whatever that is. But being able to live and be in that state, because that's actually your intended state of being. The rest of it is a distraction. It's an illusion that you're actually going through all this pain and suffering, and it's the dissonance, right? Yeah. And it's the illusion, and it's actually keeping you from experiencing your natural state of being, which is one of just feeling so freaking good.
Yeah, all the time.
We want you to be. Yeah, baby.
I love it. That was great. So if people want to get in touch with you, obviously, you're tagged here, but how can people get in touch with you? What's the easiest way?
Yeah, you can hit up my website, and I'll just give you the book website, but it'll bring you to my main website as well. So it's loveunstuck.com, and you'll find the newest book there about healthy relationships. You'll also, if you go on to the Work With Me page, you'll find a bunch of freebies I have. I do have some resources for people pleasers as well. So if that part resonated of the conversation, I got something a little bit there for you. The meditations are there, super fun. And my podcast, you'll find as well on my website. Season 3, I was talking about relationships the whole time. Spoiler alert, it is the relationship with yourself. And you will hear me using the phrase radical responsibility, I think more than a couple of times, or at least I've definitely talked about the concept because it is an underlying theme in every one of the conversations I've had, because you can't change anyone else. And it's a futile effort to continue to try to do that. And just really taking back your personal power means you doing what you can do and controlling the one person on the planet that you have the ability to control. And that is you.
Absolutely. I love all of this. Thank you so much for sharing everything. I think what you're putting out there is amazing. You're truly unforgettable. Seriously, the Happiness Hussy. Thank you so much for being here. To all of you listening, Loving Me is back. We are, on your newsfeed every Tuesday at 7:00. And so tune in every Tuesday. Thanks so much for being here, Christy. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much.